This is Docere Digest Podcast, breaking down health concepts. This podcast is brought to you by Docere Life Center. This innovative clinic is finding new solutions to the evolving challenges mankind faces in the 21st century. By utilizing cutting-edge technology and testing, they find root causes and also offer treatment with energy and nutrition. What is the mission? To dynamically change lives for the better while impacting families for generations. The information shared directly or indirectly in the Docere Digest podcast is not to be understood as or misconstrued as medical advice. This information is not a replacement for your current health provider who is acutely aware of your current health state and course of treatment. Any information shared about a product or service discussed by any host or guest on this podcast is not to be interpreted as a doctor-patient relationship.
Welcome back to this episode of Docere Digest. I'm Dr. Kyson Frank, and this is
Dr. Craig Varney.
And today we are doing an impromptu discussion on an important topic, which is?
Me?
I don't know. We're not talking about witches.
Yeah.
Yes, let's talk about Dr. Craig today.
Okay.
Let's see, why are you here? What is your purpose? What's your drive? What's your motivation? What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning, gets you excited about coming to work? Now, let me scratch it. To coming to the clinic to help people.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. I think what I enjoy the most is helping people uncover what's buried in their unconscious and subconscious. I like bringing that which they're unaware of to their awareness.
Okay. Besides a game of emotional peekaboo,
Right.
how does this affect and change their life? Why is this important for them to understand these things?
So one of the things has been an emphasis for me lately is I believe we are in a ratio of one of two states. You're either in a state of fight or flight, or you're in rest and repair.
I believe that too.
Right. Yes. And the more you're in fight or flight, the more unhealthy the body's going to be. It's impossible to be healthy in a state of fight or flight, especially a sustained state of fight or flight. In an emergency situation, that's a different scenario.
So explain it in such a way for people to actually understand why. Because some people perform really well under stress and they like it. That actually helps them do things, get things done.
Yes. And do they pay a price long term for it?
Well, yeah, but help me explain to them why that's important to them.
Okay. So if you're being chased by a bear, fight or flight is very, very important because you have one of 2 to 3 options. You're either going to run away as fast as you can, which is why you always want to have a friend around so you can outrun them. Number 2,
I'm going to snap your leg and outrun you no matter what.
or you're going to stay and fight. Now, in an emergency situation, you need the increased cortisol, the adrenaline, the norepinephrine, all that stuff for your heart rate to beat faster, for your lungs to work faster, for to shut digestion down. You need all that process. The problem is most of us kind of live that way all the time on an unconscious level. We don't necessarily feel stressed all the time, but physiologically your body is acting as if it is.
Okay, so let me go back to a second ago. We were talking about the 2 states that we live in. Mm-hmm. As you made that statement, I go, well, there's actually a third.
Okay. What's the third?
Because if a bear is attacking you, what are you supposed to do?
If it's attacking you,
yeah,
that would be the freeze that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You just go into paralysis, basically.
Yeah.
Now,
and so that's your third state almost is
right.
You just lock up and play dead, which is technically what you're supposed to do for a bear. So I don't know if this analogy is working, but okay, let's go back to.
Well, I'm not gonna experiment with it to find out. Again, to me, the big problem, it isn't that we have that fight or flight state. It's that most people stay in that long term. And I think that's what creates the degenerative changes that we experience over time.
So why?
Why do we do that?
Why do we see it, I think, more now in today's day and age than we did 20, 30, 40 years ago when you and I were still, well, I was, yeah, we were about there. Yeah. Somewhere in there.
There was one point I was taller than you. I think there's multiple factors. Number one, you have a whole lot more chemical toxins that existed, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. You also have a whole lot more electromagnetic frequency issues that you didn't have before. And I think the other thing too is we are in an age of information overload. You are just constantly bombarded with information that your body has to process. And so I tell people a lot, life's a really simple game. It's a supply and demand game. If you have plenty of supply as far as energy goes, then you meet the demands. If you don't have enough supply or you have too many demands, then you start to have a deficit, and there's going to be a cost somewhere.
So in regards to information overload, he's not referring to this podcast, by the way.
That's right.
This is good information.
Exactly.
So there's a couple other things I think that we're dealing with in today's day and age that, me in school in the 1990s and you in school in the 1960s, just kidding. We don't have to deal with the things that our kids deal with today with social media and all of these mirage of what people present themselves at that is probably not true.
Right.
They only post what they want people to see, which then gives people this other anxiety, this what they need to live up to or portray.
Right.
And then they get to the point where they can't even live authentically with who they are anymore.
Right.
And a stake of nostalgia, I was looking at some photos and stuff from the 90s and everything else, and I thought that was kind of cool, seeing all that. And then back to the 70s, when I was born. Do you remember that? You were what height? No.
I was.
And it was amazing how people looked.
Right.
They were thinner. They were smiling more. They looked happier.
Right.
Cars were colorful back then. Everything's so bland, and it feels like the color's been sucked out of the world in so many ways. And I find it interesting that what we're living in is this kind of black and white grayscale blah, and everybody's fake and artificial, trying to present themselves as something they're not. And I think part of the future, I think we're going to see people who are really authentic with themselves. They can look at it and say, yeah, I have these flaws. This is who I am. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get better. It will have resonance with more people.
Right.
And I'll be the first. I am way flawed. It's amazing I'm here doing what I'm doing, but God's got a sense of humor. I mean, for both of us, maybe more than others, but. And, it's interesting to sit back and go, okay, how do we go through and change the world around us when we see it slipping and falling away? So my kids and their generation, that's one of the big things is figure out who you are, not who the world tells you you are.
Right.
And when you can be authentic with yourself, you're not trying to keep up appearances, you're not trying to be something you're not. I mean, you can strive for things to become better. I think we should all do that. But I don't necessarily think that means that we need to live up to something that's not who we are authentically. And that causes stress.
Yeah.
And we live in a society where we want results, we want things done. You got to work overtime, weekends, whatever it takes to keep up with all the things that we need. How do we deal with that in today's society? I think authenticity is kind of one of the big ones that when you can actually figure that out who you are, the problem is so many people, they don't even know who that is anymore.
Right.
Or what that is. So how would you encourage someone to figure out how to become more authentic to who they are? And here's where it gets hard is because we have families and friend groups that have, this is who you are. Even as a child, they've told you this, and you try to live within this system of who they told you are, and that may not be authentic to who you are. I know I have. I know I've had to resist, be a little bit more of a rebel and other things else because I felt a drive and a motivation and a passion to do things. I felt there was a calling on my life to do more than just what I told to be who I was told I was. So how do we be more authentic?
What I find helps me the best, we just talked about that reverberating sound before we got on, didn't we? And I just made it do that. So For me personally, I think we're the inauthentic. God, that word is so crazy. Try to say
Can you say that word?
inauthenticity together. I think the challenge comes in this. I think we have thoughts and we have feelings, and they don't always align. And I think the problem is you go, okay, am I my thought or am I my feeling? Or am I something completely different? And I think one of the things that I believe personally, that this has kind of become a philosophy or a honing point for me, is I think the biggest challenge in our world is most people are not taught as children how to process emotions. And because they're not taught how to process emotions, they tend to stuff all that stuff down inside themselves. And then as they become adults, they have this logical brain that they're seeking to operate out of, and yet they have these underlying programs that still create feelings. And depending upon what type of person you are, if you're more of a feeler, then it really bogs you down. If you're more of a doer, you'll keep going. What I think it does is it creates this underlying physiologic stress that's where the cost comes into play. And so I think that the biggest source of stress in our society is that feeling of I'm not being authentic. I think this, I've been told this, I feel this, which way do I go?
So you said most children aren't taught how to deal with emotions properly. And sometimes there's emotions that we experience that we don't recognize in our childhood until you get much later.
Sure.
And some of those things are already programmed in, as you said. So how did you teach your children to deal with emotions?
I didn't as well as I would have liked to. I mean, I did the best I knew. I really sought to help them think about what they were experiencing. If I could go back and do something different, my favorite example I use with my patients is this: if your daughter came to you at 5, 6, 7 years of age and she goes, "Dad, I'm ugly," what would be the first thing you're going to say?
I would question why she would say that. Where are you getting this information?
Okay, so you're not the typical parent, because most parents are going to go, "No, you're not. You're beautiful." Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So we basically just told them, "You're wrong," and just ignore that and go on. They didn't work their way through it. They were just told what to do with it. And I think that carries on into adulthood, where they'll feel something about themselves as an adult, and this voice goes, "Just ignore that, push it away, and just keep going forward." And they haven't really walked their way through that problem.
So this kind of brings up the thought, when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit and God comes and he's calling for them. He says, "Where are you at?" And they go, "Well, we're naked." They were hiding. He goes, "Who told you this?
Right.
Who gave you this information that you think that this is who you are?"
Right.
And so that's something, even with my kids, when they were in middle school and stuff, that's when things start getting really hard in middle school because of the peer pressure and all this stuff, keeping up appearances. And it was bad when I was in school. I'm sure it was when you were too. And I think it's worse now because it's not just the school hours, it's every hour of the day.
Right.
You're on social media seeing
Right.
all these different things here.
Yeah.
And so there's not really a break from it. So all these intrusive thoughts are constantly there and affecting people.
Sure.
So with my kids, when they're in middle school, I sat down, I said, "Listen, you're going to represent yourself with a certain identity. What is that? Are you a football player? Are you in the choir? Are you a theater? This is who you are. This is who you become." I said, all these things can be taken from you. None of them mean anything. One day you'll stop being a football player. One day you'll stop being this. One day you'll stop doing that.
Right.
And you'll wonder who you are. Same thing happens with married couples. They have all these kids. The kids grow up. They move out. They look at each other and they go, "Who are you?"
Right.
They don't even know anymore because that was their identity. Well, I'm a parent. I do this. We go to the games. We do all these things here. They're gone, live their own lives now. They're like, who am I and what's my purpose and what it is? And so be very careful what you base your identity on, because going back to authenticity, I think this becomes an issue because when that's taken away, what's left? Who are you? And so what I encouraged my kids to do, I said, build your faith of who you are, and you just happen to do these other things, but they don't identify you.
Right.
Don't let that become who you are based upon that, because it'll all go away sometime. And then what are you left with?
Right.
Who are you? Who are you going to be? What does your future look like? And I think that really becomes a problem, especially in today's day and age. Not that it wasn't when we were younger, or maybe even for our parents too. I don't know. That was a long time ago. But I think with the advent of the social media and all the things that we're dealing with now, and what kids are dealing with this generation as they're growing up, and what our grandkids are going to be dealing with, is how do we encourage them to figure out who they are no matter what?
Right.
I encourage my kids to take a gap year from school and wait on college. None of them listen to me. They're in a rush to grow up and live their life. Because I wish I would have. I said, you know what? Take a gap year. Go do something. Go work on a cruise line. Go see the world. Go do stuff. Do missions work. I said, you want to figure out who you are faster than anything else? Serve people. If you serve people, you will figure out where your hopes, dreams, desires, and who you are, and you will overcome so much of the garbage that you have in your head, and you'll just push it back going, that's not even who I am anymore. So I encourage you, find a way to serve people. I don't care if it's missions, I don't care if it's a job, whatever it is. If you can go through and volunteer, do things like that, not only will you feel better about it, you'll know your value and worth in helping other people. You'll be authentic to who you are and kind of figure out, what do I truly believe about the world around me, and how do I go through and change it for the better?
Right.
So, authenticity is a big one to deal with, to get you out of this fight or flight state, to know whether you should be stressed or not about something.
Right.
So, how else can we get out of fight or flight? How do we calm the mind down? How do we go through and balance ourselves out to a point where we can reset?
I tell my clients there's 2 steps, really. Number 1 is being aware, because many times we're in fight or flight and we're not even aware of it. So that's, to me, step number 1. I just do a simple little test. I ask them to ask themselves, what do you feel? Where in your body do you feel it? And why do you feel it? And then you can even take it a step further and go, where did you learn, or when did you learn to think and feel this way? And then my favorite part of the whole thing is this. Once you can become aware of what you're actually experiencing, what would you be doing if you didn't feel it? Because what I think the really biggest challenge for all of us is, it isn't the thoughts or the feelings that really bother us. It's the behavior that comes out of it that really bothers us. We don't like how we end up behaving because of the feelings, because of the thoughts. And if you could just have what I would call hold space, to have the thought, have the feeling, and still create a pause and choose your behavior, which is what, to me, this process does. By being aware, I'm not trying to suppress or not trying to ignore or pretend it's not there, because I think people do that at times too. And that just creates a problem as well, because it will come out somewhere. And if I can allow space for it and still choose my behavior, now I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to be more authentic. I both acknowledge the feeling and I choose the behavior. And what I find too, why this is so important as well, the more you can repeat this process, the more you start to create a new pathway. Because I think part of our problem is we have hidden pathways within ourselves, hidden programs we don't even realize are there until a certain trigger comes along. And so what we tend to do is do our best to ignore it, or try to distract ourselves, or, do some type of comfort activity, instead of going, okay, wait a minute. I think this, I feel this. What if I chose my behavior instead of just allowing it to dictate my behavior?
There's one of the worst feelings in the world is when you've worked so hard to get through something, and you think you've overcome it, and some little nuance of something comes along and triggers that response and boils back up, and you're going, I'm still dealing with this? I thought I moved beyond it. And it's like, nope, just one more thing that I have to, okay, let's let this go. And I don't remember the movie, but one of the taglines that always stuck with me was, living as an adult is basically overcoming your childhood.
Absolutely.
And it's, okay, so what does that mean? And you have the ones that either wallow in it, or the ones that want to actually work their way out of it and get better.
I think that's a significant point too, because I find a lot of times people go, well, I don't want to just go back and wallow in it. That's not the point. And that's, I think the when or where did it occur is an important understanding, because I think that one of the most interesting things is some of the troublesome belief patterns we have didn't start with this huge traumatic experience. It was just this small experience that we thought and felt a certain way towards it. We created a framework for it, and then we started to see life from that perspective. And so I think that's why it can reoccur. You go, well, I dealt with this issue back in my life, but it could have started earlier in your life. And again, the point isn't to go back and wallow in it and feel sorry for yourself because you had this experience. It's more just being aware of going, wow, I saw this experience from this perspective, and I've carried that program not only just psychologically, but to me, it's a neurologic pathway. It's a physiologic, habit that occurs. We tend to think that thoughts and feelings are this kind of detached thing from us, but to me, our emotions are our chemistry, and our chemistry is our emotions. Our thoughts are our neurology, and our neurology is our thoughts. That's kind of the perspective I take on it. I think why it's so important, and where I'm personally have started to found success with this what if, is because I'm literally rewriting the pattern as opposed to just trying to stop the pattern from occurring.
It's kind of like software. You have to do a patch and upgrade every day because these things are going to come through. You're going to find, oh, we have a bug here. We need to work that out. How do I do that?
Right.
And so first thing, you got to be aware of it. If we just forget about it, saying, it's not that big of an issue,
Right.
We'll let it ride for a while until it becomes a bigger issue.
I think what's interesting in that too, one of the things I'm learning to do, because most of us, when we have something that comes our way that we don't like, we tend to begrudge it and we get mad, speaking personally. I'm learning to be grateful because these experiences bring to the surface something that was buried. And if you didn't have that experience, that buried pattern or pathway is not going to be brought to the surface. And so I'm actually learning to be grateful and go, okay, how do I learn to interact with this differently than I have habitually?
So the concept of every blessing can become a curse and every curse can become a blessing,
Right.
is a concept that I really like. So when something doesn't go the way I want it, why is that? It may be for my own benefit.
Absolutely.
The game may be rigged in my favor. I just don't see it. So perspective and awareness is a big thing. Okay, let me look at the situation here. This isn't what I want. It's uncomfortable for me. I have to go through something I don't want to go through. What's on the other side of it? And that becomes a big thing for us to actually continue to get better when we look at that. But, today's day and age, we just want things to be easy. We want to be comfortable.
Don't you also find there's an aspect of many people that they almost like victimhood
Oh, yeah.
because it gives them an excuse?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that ties into it, that it's like, if I can blame somebody else, then it's not my fault. And so I don't have to fear failing. I can, I can just blame my lack of success on somebody else. And I think that's buried in a lot of us, that it's like, wait a minute, don't take away my
Yeah. Well, this goes back to the identity.
Right.
I'm a victim. This is who I am.
Right.
And I think the worst part about it is, with today's social media and stuff, is you find a whole group of you all get together and whine and complain together about it. I have patients that come in, and sometimes it gets to the question where, do you even want to get better? I've had patients with Lyme disease and stuff. They're being taken care of by everyone else. They live, other than the pain they're going through, and I'm not denying they're living in pain.
Right.
But it's more comfortable dealing with that than actually getting better and having to be responsible of their life. And that's one of the most frustrating things as a doctor going, why? We can fix this. We can do it. And I've seen kids and teenagers manipulate their parents through it. And, it made me sick to my gut going, what are you doing? And the parents are completely fine with it. They're like, yeah.
Don't you also find some of that's almost even on an unconscious level? They didn't even fully realize they're doing it.
Some, at certain ages. I think younger kids maybe a little bit more. You start getting teenager stuff, and I've seen some of these people, and this goes back even into the parents' identity. Then they're like, I'm a caretaker for a sick kid, and so everybody feels sorry for me, and my church groups, my ladies groups, whatever it is, and they just feel sorry for me. I have a sick kid, and they take care of it. They bring meals over and everything else. That becomes some part of their identity as well. And so the whole system becomes wonky, and eventually it all falls apart. And who's responsible? Who's going to do anything with it? I don't think that's the way we're called to live.
I don't either. I think we don't even realize it's happening a lot of times, though. I think what happens, I tie a couple of things into. One is, number one, I think why fight or flight is so important is to realize the very base program of your existence is survival. That is the default. That your body is typically doing everything it can to help you survive. And I think part of what happens too along the way is we get these different priorities. You know, you think one thing is a priority and you feel another thing is a priority. And so you go, okay, well, the body goes, well, which way do I go? Do I go with the thoughts of what I should do, what I've been told to do, or do I go with the feeling of what the inner child aspect of me wants to do? And so I find that, I think there's so many situations where people, they know what to do and yet they don't do it. And they don't do it because if you just ask them, well, I just didn't feel like it. Their feelings became the higher priority.
Based upon their comfort level. And I think that's really what I see with a lot of these patients that come in and stuff. They live in such a comfortable environment where they can get away with it. I mean, if you're in another country, third world country, whatever else, tough luck. Nobody's coming to save you.
Right.
We've made it almost too easy for some people. I'm not saying that people don't need help. I'm not trying to say that. Because you and I, we've had an uncle who was a quadriplegic. He needed help to survive. He did, but he worked his butt off. He graduated top of his class at WSU as a quadriplegic. He was a professor and taught there. He did everything he could to provide for himself to the best that he could, and yet he still needed help for caretakers and things like that.
Absolutely.
But that's somebody who's willing to work, even despite their circumstances, to do that. And so I think growing up with that and us volunteering to help them out and everything else as kids, because that's what we did. You know, we went over, we helped take care of them, do stuff, because it's family, it's what we do. And so when I see some of these victim mentalities, I'm going, if anybody who had a right to do that is our uncle. Mm-hmm. And yet he never took that on. At least I don't think he did. He always worked as hard as he could to try to make something of his life, do the best he could. And toward the end of his life, you know, he needed more help than normal, but he fought. Despite of his circumstances, he fought to do the best he could with what he was able to do with what was given to him. And I really think that's a big part of it. So there's a concept of work hard, play hard. If I say rest hard, everybody looks at me like, what? I'm not talking about sleep. How do you rest? How do you reset your body? How do you reset your nervous system? Because we can go out there and we're like, hey, we're having fun, but having fun sometimes can be stressful. I'm going to go out to the lake this weekend. Well, you got to pack the boat up. You got to make sure the batteries are charged. You got the gas on, have the cooler full. You make sure the kids have life jackets, whatever it is. I'm getting stressed just thinking about that. Mm-hmm. So am I having fun yet? I'm on the boat. Am I having fun yet? Sometimes you wonder. Right. And so it's like, okay, work hard, play hard. How do you rest hard? And I guess that's the real question. So if I need to reset myself, that's rest. And we're not talking sleep, because some people literally work hard, play hard until they crash and burn, and they get up and do it again until there's nothing left. And they just said, what am I doing here? There's not a time for reflection. There's not a time to sit there and process the events of the day or deal with the emotions. And honestly, I think a lot of people are running from the emotions, so that's what they do.
Absolutely.
Play hard, work hard, and drink hard or whatever else it is to ease the pain or to not deal with it, and they're running from it. I remember I used to have patients. I had one patient specifically when they came in, and she was having issues. I said, listen, I said, yours goes back to an emotional concept here. I said, at one point in time, there was something that happened that you buried. So we're going to go down the hallway of your mind to that back corner where you wallpapered over the door. I'm going to kick the door open. We're going to go in there. We're going to break all the crates open. We're going to pull this picture out of this event that happened in your life with this ugly frame around it, and we're going to look at that. You should see them breathing. They're already panicking. Mm-hmm. I go, why does that have an effect on you like that? I said, the mere fact that you are having this response to it tells us what this is doing to your body. I don't even know what it is back there, but you do.
Right.
And you're scared to open it up. You don't want to go there. And the concept is that every time you have a memory, you're only remembering it the last time you remembered it.
Right.
So I said, there's a picture. Let's say this is the memory. And we put a frame around it. And every time we pull it up, we add more to it. So there's more emotions that get bogged down to this big, ugly, nasty frame around this little picture here. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's the frame itself now that affects it. We've been to art galleries. You see some of the most beautiful paintings, but if you put it in a basic white frame or whatever else. It doesn't look ornate as a big gold plated, whatever. So let's remove that memory from all the other stuff that's been attached to it. And let's look at it with new eyes. Because sometimes it happened as a kid and we don't understand. We don't know what our parents were going through. We don't know what was happening. And we had an emotion, a memory, and we responded a certain way. And we don't know. So let's go back and let's look at that emotion now. So many people come in and, well, my parents said this or they did that or whatever else it is. I go, great. You're a parent now. Mm-hmm. Have you ever failed your kids? Well, yeah. Did you mean to? Well, no. I said, did you ever say something because you were stressed? Yeah. So can you go back now to that memory and look at it from a different perspective, different angle, and say, what were they going through? And now that you're older, you know things that your parents were dealing with, stuff that you were oblivious to as a kid, and go, can I actually go through and say, I need to forgive them for that. I need to forgive myself for that. I need to release that information. And sometimes it's more than that. There's other people you need to go talk to and work through some things. There's a lot of trauma that's deep. I'm not trying to make light of that because there's some very serious things that people have dealt with in life that need a little bit more than that. But you got to forgive yourself. I think that's the hardest thing people have.
I would agree. I tell people that I think there's 3 stages you're going to go through in a relationship. We tend to start with blame because that gives us that victimhood because we want justification for why we failed, which then to me, you move into understanding is what you talked about. Now that you're a parent, you can see why they would have struggled with what they struggled with. The third thing I tell people is when you get to compassion, then you have a healthy relationship. Because not only do you understand why they did it, but you realize if you were in their same shoes, the likelihood, especially with all they experienced, you would have done the same thing. And so now you don't hold it against them. And I think what you said is really important too, because I think the craziest thing I find is buried underneath that, we ultimately blame ourselves, and that's what we really try to run away from. And I think that's what hits us so hard. I think at the core of ultimately everybody's emotional struggle is some aspect of I'm not good enough. I think early in our life, we take on this idea and then we just see events from that perspective. And what you said is really important because it's not about really fixing the experience. It's about reframing the experience. You see that experience from a certain perspective. And as long as you see it from a certain perspective, you're going to feel about it the same way and you're going to react to it the same way. If we can reframe the experience that it doesn't mean what you've taken it on to mean, it just means you went through that experience.
So one of the concepts that I like is it's a chain of events that happens from person to person to person. Hurt people, hurt people, hurt people, hurt people.
Correct.
It's our job to break the chain, to recognize what it is. I'm not going to pass this on. I have to seek forgiveness for the things I said or done to other people, and I have to break this chain. And if everybody took that avenue, there wouldn't be as many hurt people hurting other people.
I will tell you why I think also that occurs sometimes too. I talked to a lot of parents about this concept. The interesting thing is we will tend to parent ourselves as we were parented. And what I find it's interesting because a lot of kids grow up and go, I'm never going to be like that when I'm an adult. And they do their best not to treat their kids in that way. And yet they end up treating themselves that way internally. And I think that's even a bigger issue because, and what I find too is when they get under stress, then that old parent mentality will tend to come out. And that's why I think this fight or flight concept is so important is if you're staying in that constant state, then you're not going to be the healthy parent, the healthy spouse, the healthy brother, friend, whatever that you have the capacity to be.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. When you learn to serve other people, and by doing that, you will actually find your authenticity, and you'll be able to see other struggles that people are going through. And I don't really like the comparative game so much as, comparing people back and forth, but it may give you a better appreciation for what you've gone through and for what you've been through and go, you know what? It wasn't that bad compared to what other people have. And I don't mean that in a comparative way, but it's more of a recognition. I need to understand that I've been through things, recognize that, but at the same time, I'm greater than that. I'm not going to let that take ownership over my life. It's not going to be who I am. I refuse to give it any power in my life because it's not serving me. And for that fact, there's so many emotions and responses we have that allow us to deal with things that serve us when we're younger. But as we get older, these thoughts, these moods or attitudes or whatever it is that's holding us back, they're not serving us anymore. It's time to let those things go. It's time to move on. Life is about continuing to improve and grow. As we said the other day, life is organizing chaos. And so we have chaos in our life. I think that's more so as kids, and we're trying to reorganize that as adults to understand it. And how do I pass on all the best things about me and limit the amount of things that I have flaws with that I'm still working through to my kids, and help them live better lives so they can take the same approach with their kids and continuing a legacy of trying to continue to improve who we are as a family and a lineage and everything else. So if that's my legacy, is that I can help my kids be better parents than I was. And again, I told my kids a long time ago, I said, listen, I want you to far surpass me in life. I want to clear the bar that I set. But I'm not going to make it easy.
I think the simple answer to that is self-love. I think the problem, most people don't fully love themselves.
What does that mean?
I believe it's to love yourself.
Yeah, because most people hear that and, all kinds of different connotations or what they believe or whatever else. And
they tend to put a negative connotation that that's selfish. That's not what I mean by that. I mean, I'll give you a simple example. Let's go back to let's talk about a healthy diet. Most people know what a general healthy diet is. Why don't they live that way? Because the things that you fully love, you take care of. If you love your car, you wash it, you clean it, you do all the things for it. Why do we not do that for ourselves? I think that's why most people are not as healthy as they could be, because they don't love themselves. They don't care for themselves in a loving way.
Or they think they are by, well, you did good today. You need a treat. Let's get some ice cream on the way home.
Right.
We did such a good job today.
Right.
I'm so proud of you. Here you go.
Right.
Where I think self-love almost needs to be more tough love than anything else.
I find when I am truly in a state of love, I am automatically drawn towards healthier foods. I'm automatically drawn towards doing healthy activities. I'm automatically drawn towards going to sleep at a healthy time. I don't have to make myself do it. It just happens. It's when I am not being loving to myself, you almost have to force it to occur.
So how do you get in that state?
To me, the core problem is we grew up with a flawed belief system that says you're not good enough. And
where did you get that information from?
I think personally, it comes from our parents, and I think for them it came from their parents. And I don't think it's, my mom and dad didn't sit down and go, son, I'm not good enough, and I want you to feel not good enough. I don't believe that's what occurs, but I think what happens is they struggled to love themselves, and they emanated an energy, and we at an early age are such mirror creatures. We mirror what we saw, and it becomes this underlying program that we don't even realize is there.
Well, just for a disclaimer, just so you know, we're both firstborns, so we had to raise our parents. And so there's a whole different dynamic between us and the younger ones.
Well, yeah, we didn't even tie that aspect into this whole... that's what I find so interesting about healthcare is it's so multifaceted, and yet it's also very simple to a degree, too. Because if you're in a heal and repair state, the body knows what to do. If you're in a fight or flight state consistently, it's a problem. That's a simple concept. And yet getting yourself to sustain in that heal and repair state, it's complicated because you have so many factors. My brothers and I are going through the book, The Shack, right now. And there's there's this one part that I love. It talks about free will. We all have free will. And then there's this effect, you have the parental effect, the genetic effect, the cultural effect, the environmental effect, the religious effect. all these things that impact our free will. So as we go to make choices, I think that's why this awareness thing is important, because you're making choices. You don't even realize why you're making the choice. I think so many people live their life because this is just what I'm supposed to do. I didn't necessarily completely choose it, but this is what I saw and this is what I think I'm supposed to do, so I just keep doing it. And I think so many people live their life to not experience something as opposed to experience something. If I could summarize everything that I seek to do when I come in here, it's that one simple thing, because I think so many people are just trying to not experience something. They're trying to get away from pain as opposed to truly live. That's what I want people to do, is to fully live up to their capacity. And I want to do everything I can to help them do that. And I think it's these buried patterns and programs that get in the way of that. And I think what ends up happening too is then if they don't address it over time, it will manifest in the body as well. You start to have gut issues and breathing issues and brain issues and neurologic issues and joint issues and all this other stuff. It's a supply and demand issue. If you don't have enough supply to meet all the demands of the body, something gets sacrificed somewhere along the way.
I think that's so important with the cases that we deal with. Mm-hmm. We deal with chronic illnesses, which means this is people who have had a disease or an ailment that's lasted for a long time.
Right.
And why can't they get better? And not saying it's all this, but this is an aspect that we have to address along the way of getting people better, is going, why was your body in a situation where it became susceptible to this ailment or disease or infection,
Correct.
Whatever name we want to put on it, that allowed this to even progress to become where it is.
Right.
And sometimes we don't realize that those things actually affect certain organs. Mm-hmm. There's a great book, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. They just manifest themselves in other ways.
Right.
And so when we look at that, you can actually go see, here's the organ we're having an issue with. Here's the muscle. Here's the joint. Here's emotions that get stored there. And you go, okay, so what is this issue here, and how do we deal with it? How do we resolve it? How do we allow you to process these things, move beyond them, and let them go and release those things from the past? Because all they're doing is robbing our future. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the big key here to this conversation, is just helping you acknowledge that there's another layer here that needs to be addressed. And so if you've had issues with chronic illness and things have been holding you back from getting to where you want to get to in life, and the big question is, do you want to get better?
Right.
Because if you can't answer that question honestly, then we may not be able to help you unless you're ready to do that.
Right.
And that's frustrating as a doctor, especially. I'm so passionate about, I know you are too, about getting people better, especially when we're dealing with chronic illnesses, because it's more we're fighting against than just an infection.
Right.
And so I know we need to move on with this, but any final words?
I like to tell people your body is telling a story. Are you listening to the story? That's our job, is to help you understand the story your body is telling. And how do we start to tell a different story?
Yeah, how do we rewrite it?
Right. That's really the whole thing, is so much of our existence is habitual. And you're either going to just continue along the same habit, or we're going to start to create a new pathway. And that's ultimately our goal, is to create new pathways for people.
Another concept of that is are you the hero or are you the villain of your own story?
Right.
And how do we change that?
Yeah. Are you the victim or the victor?
How do we write a redemption arc into the story to bring you about? So
absolutely.
If you want any more information about how we can help or what we can do to talk with you about moving through some of these things that may have been holding you back, please check out our website at docerelifecenter.com. It'll be in the links below. Or call us at 316-531-3030. We do telephone calls, Zoom calls, and in office if you'd like more information to see how we can help you. Call today for a free consult and let us know how we can help you reach new heights in your life.
Thank you for listening to the Docere Digest podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also find all the episodes and show notes over at docerelifecenter.com. While you're on the website, also be sure to check out the blog, where you'll find videos and articles to help you proactively rebalance your health.